Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Miss Silly Lessons Learned. Today, I have like an amazing guest. He actually is one of my former, friend in high school. We haven't seen each other in 30 years. Mark, it's been so long, right, since we have, seen each other. Can you tell the audience, like, what's your name, your title, before we go into like the other conversation questions?
Oh, absolutely. Well, my name is Dr. Mark Anthony Barella Eubank, and I am currently serving as the Executive Director of the New Mexico Association of Elementary School Principals. And I am a retired educator, teacher, school administrator, and a district administrator. And I decided to continue working with school principals across the state after I retired from the public school sector. And also teach some college courses on the side as well. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Oh my goodness, that's so impressive, Mark. you know, all the roles you had, in the school system is like so important. I really want to get into that in a moment, but before we get to that point, can you tell me, like, when you were going to high school, I know what you did, but the audience don't know what activities or clubs, extracurricular, activities, for example, that you were involved in that you felt like it shaped it, the person that you are today.
Looking back at high school, I think I had a great experience in my high school career. Um, Wonderful teachers. That was number one, is having teachers that were competent and caring. I think in our community, we went to school together. And so there was several teachers that I looked up to. I was very involved in high school. I think, I got involved in different organizations like the French Club when I took my French classes, and of course, band was my outing. That's what I did, and in fact, that's what I studied. I majored when I graduated high school. I majored in music education, and I was a music teacher for 12 years before I went into administration, and then I was an administrator for the other 13 years. So 25 years is what I did in the public schools. Um, and then I was, involved in my church youth group, always involved in that as a, and I served and always served in leadership positions. I think in high school I served as a president of different organizations and also the youth group. So I've just always been one of those that was a go-getter. I was the drum major of the band, uh, along with one of our colleagues, Becky, if you know Becky.
Yes.
Um, and so, it was always, I just tended to migrate in that direction where
Yeah.
I always wanted to help. I knew that when I was going to graduate high school, I was going to do something for the community, always a servant. And so I feel like my satisfaction is helping those around me
Mhm.
feel successful. And so that's the beginning of my journey. Uh,
Yes.
from high school. So I think my high school, being in high school, it's important that you do get yourself involved in those extracurricular activities, organizations, community service. It not only does it help on your resume to have those for scholarships, for college, but I think it's important that you start building that resume because it is important when you get older, once you graduate, from high
Mhm.
school or technical school or college, if you pursue that, or even if you go on just for a career, it's important to have that type of background.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you for saying that, Mark, for giving them, a direction, things that they can do now, especially like my students. I have ninth to the 12th grade. Um, Mark, with your music, because you said you were a music teacher for 12 years. So
Yeah.
what made you like go all of a sudden, you know what, I think I'm gonna go into, education leadership. Like what was going on that prompted you to kind of like leave the classroom and go into like the district level and so on?
Absolutely. Well, I love teaching music. Music was my passion, my outing, but I always knew there was something more that I could do to contribute. Um, the time I was in 2004, I believe, is when I moved into the principal role. I accepted my first principal position. In fact, I was taking leadership classes prior to that in New Mexico and across the nation during that time. A lot of funding was being pulled in various areas, different areas in the schools. One of those happened to be fine arts, uh,
Mm.
music, art, dance, drama. And so as an educational leader, and I knew it was important that I moved into that kind of role as my next stepping stone to be an
Yes.
advocate for fine arts. And so a position came available. I applied for an elementary principal position,
Mhm.
one of the main things. And then I joined the association, the state association, and I was able to, through the association, travel to Santa Fe during legislative session and advocate for fine arts in our schools.
Whoa.
That was my number one thing. In fact,
Yes.
year before I became a principal, I actually took my orchestra students to Santa Fe and we performed for the legislature, and really advocated for music education in our schools. Of course, coming from Clovis, New Mexico, probably one of the top fine arts programs in the state,
Yes.
it was important to me because it shaped who I am. It shaped who a lot of my peers are, not only music, but theater and drama, all of that. Um, it was really important for children to have those opportunities while they're in school. And so it was important for me as an administrator, as an administrative leader, to advocate and fight for that funding. And so that took me into not only the state, but I also went to Washington, D.C. and spoke with our legislatures at the
Yes.
national level and advocated for fine arts. Um, and not only fine arts, but also the principalship as well. I was still new in the area, and then I'm also bilingual, so I did advocate for our bilingual multicultural programs in New Mexico as well while I
Yes.
was in Washington D.C. In fact, I traveled every year for uh, probably about 12 years annually to Santa Fe and to Washington D.C. As a representative for our state in
Wow.
leadership. So every year that I was a principal, I did that, and then several years later, I was a principal for about 9, 10 years, and then I moved into the district level, and I was a district director. I did director of college and career readiness, and so
Wow.
and really worked with our high school students and our high school principal and teachers to give students an opportunity to follow a pathway, whether
Mhm.
they were college bound or non-college bound. It was important that they had to develop various skills to be able to live their dream. So, a lot of our students, what I loved about the college and career pathways was students had an opportunity to choose if they liked mechanics or building cars. Then
Mhm.
we focused and try to get them some kind of a certificate from the local community college that would help them, an AES, a certification of some kind, to
Mhm.
help them with their career in the future. And those that were college bound, we worked with them on scholarship letters, applications. We practiced interviews. Uh, in fact, walked them through the financial aid process. A period of time between myself working from my bachelor's degree to my master's degree. In fact, I was still teaching music. I did take a break from music, and I actually worked at Eastern New Mexico University as a financial aid officer
No
while I was
way.
finishing my master's degree. So that kind of helped me also along the way in my administrative role, and as a director for college and career readiness. It kind of helped me prepare and know how that spectrum worked at the higher ed level. And so I did that for a couple of years while I finished my master's degree, and then bumped myself back into the administrative role. So
Yeah. I love that. I love how through every role that you enter, you did it for the students. You always, like a teacher advocate. Mark, did it help though? You know how you said you travel from, you at the state level, then the national level, fighting for funding. Because I know Jenny, my theater teacher friend, we were just talking about that, the lack of funding for fine arts. Like when she does production, she has to go find money, had to do so much fundraisers. So you being there at the state and national level and say, look, here are my kids, and this is what we need. Did it help get funding?
I believe so. I think writing letters to your legislatures, not only that, the fact that I took it, took the time to travel, as my own expense to travel to Washington and to visit
Wow.
our state leaders, and in different panels and different groups. Just them knowing that we have that passion as educators to uh, take the time out
Mhm.
of our schedule to see them face to face in their own environment.
Right.
Washington is its own beast. When you're up there,
Yes.
just there's so many things being our legislators are being hit. Education is one of those that they put it at the front, but at the same time, sometimes it can fall in the cracks if we don't go out there and advocate for it as
Mhm.
civilians. Because there's other pressing issues, oil and gas, and the market,
Yeah.
all kinds of other things that they have to deal with as legislatures. That sometimes we get stuck in our education world and we think this is the only thing that they have to deal with, but it's not. But we do have to remind them, and just that I call it applying pressure gently.
Yes.
Still here, our kids are still here. We're still needing to work on our education. We need the funding to do so, and this is why.
Mhm.
I think it's important that we, as school leaders and administrators and educators, we advocate for what we believe in. Uh,
Mhm.
it's like right now, I do serve as a liaison for principals and
Yeah.
elementary and secondary principals. So, there was not a lot of funding for professional development for principals until just
Right.
maybe 5 to 10 years that it's finally built in. But districts still have control, superintendents still have control of that funding, whether or not they're going to use it for that principle or overall. So there's ways that we're still trying to clear the definition so that it is
Yes.
funding is being set aside for particular positions, just like special education.
Yes.
You have to have specific training for that. That's
Mhm.
different than a music teacher.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we have to revisit those laws, revisit the wording, making sure that funding is given appropriately and is being spent
Mhm.
appropriately,
Mhm.
why it's there. If there's $100,000 for principal training, then that $100,000 should be allowed for principal training or teacher
Yes.
training or like. So
Yes.
a lot of times there's that gray area where you can say, okay, I have this pocket of Title II monies, which is supposed to go to professional development, but I'm going to use it to bring in a consultant to teach everybody, including that group. That's
Right.
necessarily targeted professional development for that specific group. And so that's what I think our role as administrators or advocates within the state and the federal level, we have to go there and clarify that and say,
Yes.
oh, we need this amount of money to serve for this particular group, because the training is for everyone, but yet they have specific needs that are not being taken care of at the local
Yes.
level. And so that's where I think leadership uh, differs
Mhm.
in some people's their ideologies, their beliefs.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Mark, thank you so much for saying, for talking about the funding, because I know in my advocacy work as well, when I meet with like other national, leaders and organizations throughout the US in minority organizations. And one of the things I stress in the meeting is that, when I was trying to go, because, my master's is in education leadership, and I never had any funding targeted toward Asian Americans or minorities. I go, so like, federal funding, like you said, yeah, that's a great area. But the wording of it, the way it's the funding's used and the way it's filtered down from the, federal to state to like the district and then to us, the school, we don't see that. Somebody can say, if you're a principal at Mark, say, oh yeah, we have, this X amount of teachers. Oh, I didn't know that Miss Silly want to be a principal, but there should be available funding, because that way will encourage people to go into that leadership role, and there's lack of that. So I'm so happy what you said about advocating for the funding, and then be very clear and specific in what we want, even to use that funding for, and also them to see our face, like, hey, look, I'm Spanish, I'm Asian, or I'm Laotian, like I think it's important for lawmakers to see us at that we are here, and then that we want to do better for our students, or we want to do this and that, but there's no resources for our group. So I love that what you said, and it's like it's so tiring, isn't it, Mark? Sometimes it's inspiring but tiring, because you have to be relentless in your pursuit, you know
You do, and as a teacher, as an educator, and I'm not just talking administrator, I'm talking about educator overall. As a teacher,
yes.
we have to we constantly have to, if we want something done, we have to speak up.
Yes.
And I think that, there's a lot of states, in New Mexico is one of those that we do have teacher unions, but we don't have unions for administrators.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so principals and school district administrators, they're at will employees. So, when you're advocating, you're also putting your employment on the line at times, because
Yes.
if you clash with that superintendent for some reason, um, they don't have to renew your contract, or they can cut, say, well, you just don't really fit in with our vision. So,
Right.
you
Yeah.
have to be real careful. Our educators, thank goodness, in New Mexico are protected with, they do have more of ownership of their employment,
Yes.
and then they do have unions that can advocate. But there's some states that don't have, they don't have union representation.
Right.
So that's another one of those political areas. And as an administrator, you go into administration or education in general, even as a teacher,
Mhm.
you're going to deal with politics. And
Right.
um, and so it's not always beautiful and smooth and easy. My road has been bumpy along the way. Uh, it was, I've had some smooth moments, but I've had some really, towards the end of my career, I've had some,
Yeah.
some tough roads that I have to, had to battle. Especially, I worked in a district where I had a change of superintendents 2 or 3 times, well, actually 2 times within 5 years.
Wow.
That's difficult because you have someone who comes in with the vision, and everybody buys in on it. All of a sudden, boom, they're gone. They bring
Yes.
something else in, and
Oh, yes.
if you don't, how do they call it, get on the bus, they say get off the bus and you're gone,
Mhm.
and that happens, and
Yes.
unfortunately. But the thing is you have to be proud and strong enough to advocate, stand up for what your beliefs are as an
Right.
educator. And if there's something that crosses that, then I think you have to make decisions in your career. That's one reason why I retired. When I retired at 25 years, is I said, you know what, I think I need to advocate a little more for principals, because when I retired, I was a principal.
Right.
And but at the same time, we got a new superintendent that had a different vision,
Mhm.
that was not, without, could have worked really well if they would have brought in, communicated with the principals.
Mhm.
We're middle management. Principals are middle managers. There's a superintendent, and then they have directors and associate superintendents, all these other people above you.
Mhm.
But if there's a lack of communication, and you don't include that important person who's going to be out there, delivering it, because principals are the ones who make it happen.
Yes.
Don't have a good principal. You mentioned it before we were, we started talking. You
Mhm.
get a principal that comes in and wants to do some drastic changes, and does not have the vision of the district,
Right.
cause a lot of issues as well. And so, but you
Yes.
have to be able to make that decision. Say, you need to know when is when. And I think that's
Right.
probably why, as administrator, you are an at-will employee, saying, you don't fit in with what we believe in, and so
Mhm.
not that we don't like you, but your efforts may be better somewhere else.
Yes.
So, it'd be nice if it worked the other way too. And school boards are in charge of superintendents, and sometimes school board members are blindsided by what's happening with the superintendent, because that's their employee. They're only one employee.
Right.
So it takes a community. If you're trying to make change, as a school, employee, or an administrator, it's hard.
Mhm.
Those are the people you have to convince, but yet sometimes they don't like you talking to their
Right.
supervisors. Principals don't talk to the board members without me knowing. That's
Yes.
that. So there's a lot of political stuff that you have to kind of deal with as a principal. It's
Yes.
a
Oh,
tough position. You're a middle manager.
yes.
Either, and so it has its moments.
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said about, like, okay, look, it kind of reminded me of how there's non-negotiables, right, for us as, educators. And there's moments I'm going on my 27th year in the classroom. There's moments where it's like the changing of the guard, and it makes me, more, I guess, persistent or more determined to hold on to my integrity and like my belief in what education is. But like you had mentioned, like the rough bumps, right? It's okay, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to get out because, okay, you know what? You're right. your vision doesn't align with mine, and so I think it's time to go. So like you said, maybe, sometimes we have to shift, our focus to somewhere else and to different levels. And I think you made a really good point, Mark, about, how the communication between, like, say, superintendent, school board to the school. And then if you have, the superintendent just there for 2 years, and then, like, making all these changes, and all of a sudden they have a different opportunity and they just leave you. And then you're like, wait a minute, you bringing somebody else, wait, but you just barely here, what's going on? So I think at the end of the day is a lot of times, like, teachers suffer from all the changing of the guards and all the different demands. And then, we get used to certain things, and then they, like, shift, like, oh, I'm sorry, but we're not doing that anymore. So I want
I
to,
think,
'cause I know
I
our
think
time almost
that
up, but go ahead, Mark.
okay,
um
that change is the hardest part of being an educator, whether you're a teacher or you're an administrator, is when there's a change in leadership.
yes.
Um, it happens frequently. You have to be a strong individual because you've got to be open and you have to be willing to listen and say, you know what, I may have to adjust this. I may not 100% believe, but this is who the supervisor is now. This is what they want, and you
Right.
just kind of swallow it. But if you have pride like me, I don't swallow it very well. So that's probably why I get in trouble often. But I,
I love that.
but I think, you have to, like you mentioned, you have to stand by your ideals. You
Yeah.
believe in, and because it's part of who you are. And I think that's important.
Right. It's like, student first. That's it for me, student first, and, everything else need to fall into place. Mark, since we are at almost the end of our time, can you just briefly tell me, like, I know you have all these degrees. Can you just tell the audience members, like, what degrees you have, certification degrees, so that way they know, like, if somebody want to follow your footstep.
Yeah. Well, when I graduated high school, I went to college in Texas and I got my study music education. I ended up transferring to Eastern New Mexico University in Portales. I finished my bachelor's degree there in music education.
What year was that,
Um,
Mark? Because I was there 90 to 94.
90, it was 96, 97,
Oh,
90.
wow.
And then because I went from 92, I had transferred in 92. I was at the West Texas State University before
Yeah.
that. So I finished my bachelor's there and I went off and taught for a couple of years, and I decided I'm going to go back and finish my master's. So I went back to Eastern. In fact, when I was working on my master's degree, I worked for the university as a financial aid officer. I started as an admissions person, went into financial aid, finished that in a couple of years, and then I went full time as a teacher for the next several years. Music teachers I taught in small communities, Eunice and Hobbs, and then here in Carlsbad. Uh, and so my master's is in education administration. I started working on my PhD at New Mexico State University, and I finished my PhD in educational leadership and administration. So that's what I have my PhD in.
Wow.
Um,
That's what
and
my master's
that
in.
was, yeah, and that was a good time to retire from the K-12 system and move into higher ed and the executive director. I'm hoping, my goals and aspirations are to continue doing this executive director position, but hopefully become a full-time professor. Right now, in fact, right now I'm teaching music in Roswell schools because that's my passion. So I do that and executive director and whatever, and they need consultation work, for
Yeah.
educators. I do that as well. So what's nice is I can kind of build my own schedule right now.
Yeah. Oh
That's my
my
whole
God.
last 27 years in education
Yeah.
as
That is
well.
amazing, Mark. Like, you wear so many hats.
Yeah.
How do you find a balance, Mark? Like, from your professional and your, personal lives, with all those responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I'm married. I have 2 kids. I have 6 grandchildren, and so
Yes.
um, family comes first. They do, and I think it's important that you have to live a balanced life. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it gets a little crazy, and you just have to make sure you take that cruise for a week and get out, turn off the cell phone, and have no technology like when we were in school.
Yes.
Before computers were invented. No, I'm kidding. Uh, I think it's important that you do have to take care of yourself and your family. Um, the education part, I think it came natural to me natural for me as a leader. I think I'm a natural leader. There's a lot
Yes.
of areas that that I continue to work on and continue to learn. I learn from a lot of my mistakes, and I have made a lot of mistakes, but I've also done a lot of good. I believe. You
Yes.
know, when you're when you're in a leadership position, you're going to have people that like you and advocate for you, and you're going to have others that just despise you and talk behind your back. And
Haters.
have thick skin if you're going to be, because you are making a difference, and when you're making
Right.
a difference, it's easy for some and it's difficult for others. The ones who probably complain are the ones who don't go out and advocate for their children, more than likely,
True.
but he has to do it. And so
Hmm.
I this is where I'm at this day and age in my career, and I'm not finished yet. I'm too young,
Yes. Woo!
but I want to do it on my own time now. And I think everyone, you know, I for your students, I tell them think long and hard of what they want to do for their future, whether they need to, you know, they decide to go to college or whether they decide to go right into the workforce. What can they do to better themselves? You know, join organizations. I've served as leaders, you know, I've served as president of our Rotary Club. I'm currently
Yes.
serving as a chaplain for our Elks
Oh
Association.
my goodness.
I mean, so you talk about the other things, you know, you want to be involved. I've sat on boards, community boards for the mayor's office and different
Wow.
like that. You want to be involved in your community. You want people to know that you care. And I think when you put yourself out there, you know, it's rewarding. Uh, but it was also nice to say, you know, I'm done. I'm going to move on. I enjoyed
Yeah.
and so you know I think that's what we, you know, it keeps me alive, it keeps me young, um,
Yes.
even though we get older every day, but you know
Yeah.
I still have a
I,
lot of dreams and aspirations, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're not staying stagnant. I love that, you still pushing, in different directions. I'm at that point in my life too, in my education, my, profession where I'm like, you know what? I want to shift my attention to something else as well. I love teaching, but where else can I be, helpful or useful to like, students, and teachers? Because like one of my main things is I feel like teachers don't get taken care of enough, and like, mental health wise, we always go, 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 go and forced to do this and that. And then, just, I think we need something, where it be, like an organization that's very supportive of the teachers, so
And I think it's, you know, it's really difficult right now, even recruiting teachers. You know, we want our children, our students to become educators. You know, a lot of our children, they're going to have 10, 12 different careers. When we graduated high school, we knew what we were going to
yeah,
do. We
it's so
went
weird, right, Mark?
we've done it. So you don't have a lot. Yeah, it's different. Our
Yes.
students, you know, they don't stay in a career for 27 years anymore. They don't look at
Right.
retirement in the same way that I'm happy, and I do advocate for you guys. If you get a career like an education, stay for the 20, 25 years and build that retirement. That retirement's going to be important when you're older. Uh,
Right.
I think that's where a lot of our students miss that point, is they don't
Hmm.
have that. They're going to work the rest of their lives,
Right.
and that's hard, you know, not to look at the end. You know, when you do get older and you're at the end of your life, you want to make sure you can live comfortably and still have some money generating, you know. And that's the
Yes.
wonderful thing about investing for retirement, whether it be a 501k, a 401k, sorry, or you know, a
Mhm.
full retirement. So
Yes, I think that's a very good, point. We can take like a 2 week cruise if we have a good retirement, right, Mark? You
that's
know, we could go whatever we want to go, do whatever we want. That's longevity. That's important to us. Like professionally and and personally. To make sure you have a plan for the future.
right.
So that way you can retire and in a
And that's
good and
nice. I mean,
positive.
you generate your retirement check and you can work and get another check.
Hey, Mark!
That's the whole goal. So, you know, that's why I said become an educator. For those of you, I'm telling your students, it's worth it,
Right.
you know. And let me tell you, the years go fast. They
Oh,
really
sure.
do.
Yes, they
Feel
do.
like we haven't seen each other in 30 years, but I feel like I just saw you last
I
week. And oh, that
yeah, I
a
know
lot.
you. I still remember you and Becky were like phenomenal in band, and I can't even carry a tune. I can't even play any drum. I remember I was like in FHA and all that competition. So I feel like yeah, and I guess it's a great way for us to end, our conversation, Mark, is that, the connections that we make throughout our lives, is so like it's one of the most important thing, I believe, because like you said, you and I haven't seen each other in 30 years, but we felt like, hey, look, just yesterday we walk along the hallways, you know what I mean? Me, seeing you in your little uniform, the little band thing and everything, it's just so crazy. Okay, last thing before we go, Mark, can you finish this statement? A good principal is one who, or the other statement is a good principal needs to be. What do you think? So a good principal is one who, or a good principal is one who needs to be.
Well, I think I'm going to go with, my philosophy statement that I believe, a good principal is one who desires to guide and to support and to enable others to achieve their own personal success.
Woo!
I think that's how I live my life. My dad always used to say, "Un día a la vez," you live one day at a time. But that's for me as a principal. I think it's important that I'm the only one between
Mhm.
that can support the teacher the
Right.
way they need to be as a principal. They come
Yes.
to me if they need funding. They come to me if they need supplies. I have to be the one to figure out how to get it and make it happen. And I think a
Yes.
lot of principals lose sight of that by trying to, well, the director's telling me I need to get this done and, top level down. But at the
Mhm.
same time, we have to be that cushion. We have to be the advocates for our teachers.
Yes.
So for our teachers to be successful, we have to make ourselves successful and understand what they're going through. And remember, we were all teachers as well. We were all in the
Yes.
classroom at one time before, and
Yes.
not to forget that.
Yes. Mark, can you please write a book if you haven't done so?
I have
I think
it already.
hey, can
You can
you
read my online.
where is it, Mark? Send me the link, okay? So I can also put it there.
On it. So
You
yeah,
better.
I wrote a book, a critical analysis of principles, ideological perceptions of bilingual education in New Mexico.
Oh my God.
My book.
You
Yeah.
you you killing me here, okay? I need to start doing something else because like you're making me feel like an achiever, you know what I mean? Oh my gosh.
Hey,
I
30 years is a long time. Got to put it
yes,
on
yes.
paper. I think I'll write a biography next.
Yeah, you should, Mark. It's so important, especially, with our students, our minority students who see, you know what I mean, like, success like this. They need to be able to say, oh, hey, I could be like him, I could be like her. So please,
And
please
so
do
we're
that.
first generation graduates, from I'm first one to graduate from college in my
Mhm.
family. So it's important, that you represent and do the best you can. I know there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me out there, but I learn from them every single day. But I want to
Yes.
do my part. I want to do my part to advocate for our kids, and especially in my state where I'm at, and those educational leaders, our teachers, our principals, school leaders. It's important to me. That's what I studied my whole life. If I retire, I don't know what I'm going to do. This has nothing to do with
I
education. So
doubt you're gonna retire, okay?
that's going to happen. So
It next gonna be like a movie. You're gonna be like, okay, and so I'm doing a movie now. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, don't forget about your Asian friend, okay?
I,
I
what if
always
we're
want to do like
doing
that
podcast?
movie.
I didn't even know what a podcast was when we were kids.
I know, please. Our podcast was, hey, Mark,
What's
time
this?
have changed, right, Mark? But we're
Right.
still the same. All right. Well, that ends our conversation. Mark, you are amazing. Back then, you have not changed much because you are still, friendly, caring. And I love that about you, that you haven't changed. Maybe your goals have changed, your life have changed, your hair maybe have turned gray a little bit. You know what I mean? Hey, I dye my hair, okay, Mark. So that's how come it's not gray or it's
Well,
underneath gray.
I heard it's short. She cut it really short. I was going to dye it, but it's too short. I'll have to wait till it grows out.
Right. Exactly. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you like it, please share this with others who may find the information useful. In the meanwhile, remember to stay connected with your friends and family. That's what is important. And until I see you next time, bye.